Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. My name is Joe George alongside Lauren Cox. We're here with you every Tuesday at 4 o'clock and post-game for an hour, including preseason games. We were there breaking down the backup players this last weekend, so we'll be with you here this weekend as well. And today, our guest is Pat the Designer. You know him from Locked On Bulls, ESPN 1000's YouTube channel, The Breeze, all over the place, doing a million things right now. Pat, thank you for joining us today, man, and talking some Bears with us.
Thank you guys for having me, man. Very excited. Very excited.
So this is one of my favorite things that comes out every year from The Athletic. Mike Sando does a great job, I think, putting together his QB tier list. He uses GMs, scouts, coordinators. He gets a little bit of everyone involved in, what they're going to be, evaluating these quarterbacks this year. And this year it was all eyes on where does Caleb Williams fall. He falls in at number 24 on this list, be back end of tier 2 this season. Lauren, we'll start with you today. What are your thoughts on where Caleb ended up on this list and if there's anything egregious about it?
Yeah, I feel like it's so tough to put him higher, like drastically higher, just because we haven't seen the Ben Johnson picture all come together just yet. Like, I think we all fully expect him to be better than the 23rd quarterback in the NFL this season, but it's a lot of projecting and forward. And of course, like with all the coaching struggles and everything going so terribly last season, like, of course, if that's all you've got to base it on, we don't have anything new yet to actually say, here's the proof. I get why he's going to be a little bit lower than maybe we would want to see him.
Yeah, listen, 100%. Like, I think you have to look at this list and say, I think it kind of is how we feel. Was he worse than Drake May? Maybe. Drake May was in a terrible situation and looked a little bit better, looked a little bit more comfortable. Was he better than Bryce Young? Probably. And I think if you're a Bears fan, you feel, all right, at least we're not worse than Bryce Young right now. But the expectation is massively higher. I think, by the end of this season, you want to see him in that 15, 14 range, and you're hoping that Ben Johnson effect takes true hold on Caleb.
Yeah, we'll read your guys' comments here in the chat as well here on YouTube. It's Crimson says, meh, it's another list, paper football. And I get that's why some people get upset with this stuff. Some people don't. Yeah. I think, Bryce Young is and Drake, him being surrounded by that is a great point, Pat, just because, you want to be better than Drake May. I think it's fair that maybe Drake May was a little bit better in moments last year, a little bit smaller of a sample size. Definitely glad he's ahead of Bryce Young. The other name I was looking for, just because I was curious, is where's Justin Fields? Because you knew if Justin Fields was ahead of Caleb, it would set Bears Twitter on fire.
Yeah.
It would
look, Justin being 27th, I mean, I don't even know if that's fair. He was playing well before he got sent to the shadow realm behind Russell Wilson. But it's also hilarious. He's right behind Russell Wilson in the rankings. I'm not gonna lie to you.
No, it is. It's very fitting where he's at, I think.
And how does JJ McCarthy really end up anywhere before we've ever actually seen him play an NFL game? Like, I don't know. Do you leave him off of the list along with the other rookies? I mean, I'm not saying like he's too high necessarily, because he probably is better than Daniel Jones and Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. But how do you put him right? 2 below Fields and right below Penix, and they're we have no idea how good he's going to be.
I like the fact that it's just Kenny Pickett sucks.
I know.
That was disrespectful. We didn't have to do that. You could have put him just on the list. I just Kenny Pickett's bad. Put him after last week's game. Shedeur Sanders, we'll throw him on the list possibly. But Kenny Pickett, you're tier 5. He's the only one there.
Yeah, that's harsh, man. And honestly, there might be other quarterbacks that probably deserve to be in that tier with him. But it's even funnier, I think, when you look at the Twitter graphic, because they're all colored out. Then you really see it's this bright orange Bears color for Kenny Pickett of just worst quarterback in the NFL. The notes that were in there in this piece from Mike Sando, from the people we talked to, it seemed like the pace of play, knowing when the ball needs to come out, where it needs to go. Also some nervousness seemed to be the theme of Caleb Williams. So the in-depth part of the article, how much of that from last year do you think is fair from what you saw, Pat, about being nervous, not getting the ball out, and everything like that?
I think we saw the offensive line, right? Like, it makes sense to be a little nervous standing behind that. Like, you're going to get hit. I think that there were times last season, and a lot of times under Shane Waldron, where he just didn't know where to look. And, on the recap, Keenan Allen was on there with David Kaplan from ESPN 1000. And it's always been burned in my mind when Thomas Brown took over. Keenan Allen basically said he told him 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where your eyes are supposed to go. And in my mind, I'm like, so he was an offensive coordinator. Like, he told him where the quarterback should look on this play. And I get it, right? You want a guy to just go through the system, be able to read the defense, kind of figure it out. But it's very difficult to do that when you're running for your life on most of these plays, when you're under duress, when your starting center is falling over just from like snapping the football. Like, all of those things I think really play in. And it's why we saw Caleb Williams start to play better kind of when we got to that second half of the season. I think there was more comfort there, but also, right, once you got Shane Waldron out of there, once you added Thomas Brown into the mix, he started just simplifying the game for Caleb, and it started to slow down a little bit for him. Doesn't change the fact that everything in there is what we saw last season. Everything that Mike said is correct. He wasn't getting the ball out quick enough. He wasn't seeing open receivers. He wasn't hitting guys in their stride. He wasn't hitting the deep ball, right? Like, yes, there's reasons behind it, but those are still the facts of what we saw last season.
Yeah, piling on that, like, I think all of the what we saw is accurate in there, but I always get a little bit, I raise an eyebrow at, like, when especially anonymous quotes try and really pinpoint the why and say, oh, well, he was processing slow. And I mean, like, maybe it certainly looks that way, but we don't know exactly, like, is he actually just thinking slow, or was Matt Eberflus or Shane Waldron in his ear saying, hey, don't turn the ball over, don't take risks, don't force it in there, right? Was he holding on to the ball too long for any variety of reasons? And a lot of times we see this as like, oh, he must have been nervous or skittish, or he must be processing slow, or he needs to be more decisive or whatever. And I always want to be careful, like, assigning that as a specific reason, because we just don't know. Maybe he is a slow processor, or maybe he is nervous, or maybe there were other factors that were contributing to that. We just don't know it. And I want to see how that sort of develops this season to say, okay, is this a common through line trend for Caleb that is just part of who he is as a quarterback, or were the factors that were specific to last year really the biggest problems there? And now that you've hopefully eliminated most of those things, you can see that real growth as a result.
Yeah, I did think it was clear too, like in the article, some of the people that talked about what could be with Caleb Williams, and they point out not just Ben Johnson, but they point to Shane Waldron specifically and what was happening last year. And I think that's why Caleb deserves the benefit of the doubt, and that's where I think fitting at 23 is pretty fair off of last year. Because initially, when I was thinking about this list, I was like, man, they really could crush him for some of the play last year, and he could be much lower. So I think overall, like where it stands now, it's pretty fair. Before we get to how high he could go, I guess, Pat, you're there every day at camp. That stuff about, playing on time and what you're seeing with the offensive line, everything we just talked about. How much of that are you still seeing at camp, and how much improvement are you seeing on a day-to-day basis with Caleb this year?
Well, we just got out of install. I think a lot of people, hear that word install and they go, oh, all right, well, he should know it. No, they're installing a new system. They're installing a new offense. They're installing brand new plays. There's some days that were great. There's some days that were phenomenal. The day that we talked about, the most intense practice of all, Caleb looked like he was one of the best quarterbacks at football, and he was beating a good defense. And the defense got him back at times as well. But it was a true back and forth, a true iron sharpens iron practice, right? And then there's been other days where the plays weren't clicking. Yesterday, for example, right? The ball's on the ground. Way too many miscues, way too many miscommunications, right? Like, and I think now you start to look at that a little bit more, especially coming out of a preseason game, and say, okay, well, or a preseason game you didn't play in, and say, you shouldn't be missing these plays. These are now the plays that you were comfortable with. These are the plays that you should be locked on. But we still got 15 days of camp left, I believe. So there's still time for him to gain the comfort now with the plays that he already does have some comfortability with, and continue to build on that. Some days he's on time, some days he's not. And it's okay to say that, because again, this is where you want him to make those mistakes. But the one thing that you can see, and I think, Lauren brought this up, the question mark of, is he taking chances? Is he throwing the football in spots that are tight window throws? The Caleb Williams that we thought we drafted. Matt Eberflus, we know, neutered some of that out of him with the same mindset that he put on Justin Fields, the 200 rule. Don't turn the football over, 2 touchdowns, no interception, we'll win the game. It seemed like it never worked. Ben Johnson has him taking chances. Ben Johnson has him throwing tight window throws. It's why you're seeing Caleb Williams throw some more interceptions in camp, but why you're seeing some of these amazing plays from him as well. So I think he's getting the timing. He's starting to get an understanding of it. And I'll tell you what, Ben Johnson's the kind of guy, if he was worried about where Caleb Williams was at right now, he would let you know this young man's behind schedule.
His honesty has been so refreshing, Lauren, like just this entire, from the moment he got here, it's been so refreshing to hear all of it. It's still, some of it's startling. You know, I think back to the Luther Burden about him being behind, and it's just like, man, I feel like you don't hear head coaches talk about a player who's hurt a little bit like that. He's so much more. I mean, he's great for us. Like he's a headline machine right now, but it's so different this year, Lauren, from what it's been in the past. And the season hasn't even started yet.
And that honesty, I think, also helps when you hear him be intentionally vague about something, it really perks your ears and go, oh, wait a minute. Okay. If he's telling us more by not telling us in some of the situations, because we know that he normally will tell us those kinds of things, that he will be critical about Luther Burden, and like the ways that he'll speak very differently about, especially early in camp, you know, rave about Colston Loveland and then be a little bit more critical of Luther Burden, or be just, you know, not as overwhelmingly praising some players over others, I think speaks volumes there. And so I think the fact that he's been so consistent on Caleb Williams throughout this process tells you that, like, he understands practice is about testing limits and pushing boundaries and trying the things that you wouldn't try in a regular season game, because it's practice. So this is when you can kind of see the full extent of what you are and aren't capable of. And the mistakes are just as valuable for learning as the growth, as the successes. And that is how you grow, as long as you stop making those mistakes when the games actually matter. And that's what we still will need to see translate.
Pat, I'm curious, when you look at this list, the quarterback tiers, just gut reaction, how high could Caleb Williams end up on this list next year? What's the ceiling of this list for Caleb?
I mean, listen, the one thing that truly I think we don't take into account is Chicago, right? Like the benefit of seeing somebody do things we've never done in Chicago. If Caleb Williams has anywhere near the first season that Jared Goff is, we'll be talking about him probably tier 2, because tier 1 feels disrespectful to some of the people that are in there, right? To throw him in there with the Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrows, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, you got to have a pretty good season. But I think when you see kind of the instant impact that Ben Johnson had when he was working with Jared Goff, I mean, like, Jared Goff went from being a solid, you know, kind of figure it out QB to one of the guys who was giving you 3 touchdown games early on. That first season where Ben Johnson's working with him, he goes from a 19-8 quarterback for 3,200 yards to a 29-7 quarterback, 4,400 yards. I believe he had 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in his first 4 games of the season. Now, Caleb Williams, very different spot. A lot of history for Goff. He had already been to a Super Bowl. He had already been the starting quarterback of a team. He was the number 1 overall pick, had Sean McVay there already, right? But I think you have to look at that and say, okay, if you can get Caleb to be a 4,000+ yard passer, 70% from the field, a 30 touchdown QB, we're going to talk about him as one of the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you there in a similar range. Like tier 2 feels about right. I mean, if I did put some numbers on it, I think what feels about right is like top 15 in there, you know, right next to Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy. Like that kind of caliber of player feels good to me, where, you know, maybe he's not Justin Herbert or Jalen Hurts just yet, like in that top of the second tier, but that lower second tier feels good, where he should be clearly above Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith, even Kyler Murray. Like those guys in there, he should be able to leapfrog and then kind of land in that group with those other quarterbacks that are not the elite of the elite, but like you feel really good about the guy you got under center.
Yeah, if he gets into tier 2 next year, I think Bears fans would feel, I mean, whatever got him there would feel excellent. I mean, we've seen like Jaden Daniels is all the way up to 6, you know, after 1 season. I'm a little surprised, just because I feel like typically on this list, they wait to rush to judgment. But we saw last year CJ Stroud, this year Jaden Daniels are having these huge spikes. Like if Caleb puts up what Jaden Daniels did last year and wins a playoff game or 2, yeah, he'll be in the top 10 for sure. But I'm right there with you guys. I'd love to see him in front of Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, who's hurt now. I guess he's having a thumb procedure. It doesn't seem like super serious. I know they're still talking about week 1, and that's one to keep out. I know the Bears don't play them until like the end of the season, but it still is obviously important for the division. But yeah, I mean, Caleb entering that tier and passing that Kyler Murray checkpoint on this list, I think would be the goal for me for Caleb Williams.
And the one thing I respect about Sando's list is he always values winning. Like the reason Jaden Daniels is 6 is because he won. Justin Herbert's a great quarterback. He loses in the playoff. Right? Like he's modern era Peyton Manning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like maybe, eventually he'll go out there and win. Trevor Lawrence deserves to be at the bottom of this list. Like we're not hanging on the playoff win from 2 years ago. Dak Prescott didn't play, but still a really good player, but you're lower on this list because you didn't win. Baker Mayfield, dominant year last year. I think Baker's the one that's probably getting disrespected on this list. Baker had a conversation for MVP last year.
I'm fine with that.
And you mentioned Kyler Murray. Like, to me, that's a great threshold here because wasn't that one of the names that Caleb was compared to a little bit in the draft? Like a bigger Kyler Murray, like Aaron Rodgers was kind of like people going Rodgers Mahomes, so maybe a little bit too high of the ceiling there, but like bigger Kyler Murray who relies a little less on his legs, but all the different things he did in the pocket at USC and around the pocket was kind of like, oh yeah, there's some Kyler Murray in there. So there's kind of this hope that at a minimum you should be able to get a number 1 overall pick, Kyler Murray level player. And then in theory, a better version of that feels like a good threshold to try and cross in year 2.
Better version. Yes. Better version.
Yeah. Maybe you don't pass Daniels, but also passing like Bo Nix, making sure you keep JJ McCarthy, back there a little bit. Michael Penix, the guys who are in your draft class, also being in front of those guys too, I think it's important just because it shows that the Bears didn't, make the wrong evaluation. And we'll see what happens with Daniels this year. I'm fascinated to see if he has a sophomore slump in him like we see from most quarterbacks, honestly. It's going to be really interesting this year. All right, we will take our first break here. When we get back, let's take a look at just kind of the overreactions, underreactions so far. Coming out of camp, coming out of this first preseason game, I feel like the biggest overreaction we all are going to kind of point towards, it's Austin Booker. I feel like that's what a lot of people are really overreacting to the most. We'll get into that next year on the Bears Squad Show on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. Today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. Me and a couple of my friends from work, we're all playing in a league on Yahoo. And you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. Our Dynasty League is what lives there. I'm ready to get this thing going with, Pat said it there, 15 days left in camp. I'm ready for preseason to be over and also get my normal drafts up and underway because you got to wait to make sure the injury bug doesn't hit you. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. All right, biggest overreactions, underreactions, wherever you guys really want to take it up to this point in camp. I guess we're about halfway through, it feels like, at this point. Lauren, I'll start with you. Where do you want to go? Biggest overreaction, underreaction? It could be any player, anything you want.
Well, I mean, I think the obvious low-hanging fruit there, right, is the offensive struggles early on and whether or not this is going to be, Caleb struggling to pick things up and how quickly are they going to be able to really get rolling under Ben Johnson. Like to me, I think a lot of that was really kind of overblown. I mean, it just, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but like when you're going through installs and not being able to like do things for, like, you're learning it for the first time, right? It's not natural to you yet. You're always going to have these kinds of mistakes. And it's only like much farther down the line that you should be really worried if the mistakes come, but mistakes are part of the growth in this process. And I think like that's been kind of the big overreaction all along.
Yeah. The big overreaction is anything Caleb would. I mean, and I think on both fronts, right? When he has great days, he's not, Jesus Christ slinging a football. And when he has bad days, he's not, Kenny Pickett in tier 5. The disrespect is still crazy. But like, there's truth on both sides. There's some middle ground for me. Like, but people, every story, every tweet, every anything that happens, it's, this is who he is. This is what we knew. This is why we should have kept Justin Fields. Or it's, we told you guys that this was like, there's this internal war between Bears fans where it's not even, is the kid actually playing well? Is he doing well in practice? Did he have a good day? Did he have a bad day? Where's kind of the middle ground on that? It's just become, am I going to be right when I'm talking to Bob at the coffee shop tomorrow? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of where the overreactions to me come from. I thought the fan video of him throwing the ball into the net. And I think this is the part that's so tough for me when you're at camp. Number one, I'm standing right next to these guys. And half of the time, I got to turn to J-Mac and go, Jason McKee, former Chicago Bear, and go, what was that drill? What is it? What's the purpose of that? Because when you're seeing a video on Twitter for 20 seconds, you don't know what they're trying to accomplish. You don't know what the purpose of that drill is, what the purpose of this play is. There are times where, they were slandering the offensive line early on. It was like, oh, the offensive line is just letting everybody through. It was a pressure period. They were sending blitzes. So to me, the overreactions on just anything with Caleb Williams' face in it, we got to bring that 100% down.
Yeah, I think I know you work with Courtney Cronin a lot, and the piece she wrote recently, like, while the headline kind of gets you a little bit about Caleb Williams, if you actually go through it, and she goes through, like, is the offense a problem? Is Caleb Williams struggling? And it's the pro and the con of, like, each one. It's really well written and thought out, but you read the reaction to it, and people are just – it's so polarizing right now with Caleb Williams. It's fascinating, guys. Somehow this guy has become maybe the most polarizing player in the NFL in a year. Like, I don't even know, like, who's on that list with them, because the national media, the local media – everyone seems to have a very strong opinion one way or the other about Caleb Williams. It doesn't feel like it's like that with a lot of the other guys.
I've always said this. National media likes to poke fun at Bears fans because they know Bears fans poke back.
And they know we're going to read it. Like, we're going to read it when they come after us.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like other quarterbacks that are in that conversation, but I think Caleb has a specific aspect of, like, we just don't have a lot of sample size to point to. Right? I think about Dak Prescott and the, like, is he good, is he not kind of thing. But, like, it's gone on long enough that I think, like, everyone kind of has an established where they stand on Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy. Same conversation, like, is he worth the big contract or not? But, like, with Caleb, there's still so much, like, unknown. Like, Dak Prescott's not going to become a different quarterback this season, and Purdy's not going to be a different quarterback this season. But, like, with Caleb, there's still this feeling of, like, we still have so much yet to see and unveil that even the other rookie quarterbacks, like, don't carry, or the other young quarterbacks in general. I mean, Bryce Young even doesn't have this kind of polarization, even though we're not quite sure. He seemed to be a lot better, but how much better is he going to be? Like, Caleb's kind of uniquely positioned here with circumstances that have been a little bit outside of his control, but yet we still want to see him do more with what is in his control.
It's also the impatience of it, right? Like, now you don't have anyone to blame when it doesn't look like Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid, who have been together for 10 years at this point. Like, it's 8 years. It's been a long time. You got Ben Johnson. You got the coach you wanted. You've got the coaching staff you wanted. You got all these wide receivers. You got the offensive line. You've got the running backs. Okay, now who do we blame? Now we blame the quarterback. When I hear a report that, the heavens didn't open and Caleb Williams delivered a football into DJ Moore's lap as he floated into the end zone, you're always looking for somebody to blame. And I think that's the worst thing that comes out of training camp, especially in Chicago, is camp is a time for you to make mistakes. And while there is blame that's assigned, it's a time where if you're the problem, you've got time to fix it. That's the purpose of training camp. And I think just most people online, most people on Twitter, most people on YouTube and stuff, like, they don't look at it that way. They say, well, it should be perfect right now because you're a professional and you play this sport that I could only dream to play. And I can do this on Madden.
Or college football now that it's back.
CFP 26.
Great. The other one I teased before we went to break, Austin Booker. The reactions are hilarious at this point. I mean, we're a couple days removed from the game. I mean, great game for him. Lauren and I were doing the post-game show, and yeah, you're excited about it, but there's backups in there. And yeah, but 3 sacks and a forced fumble does feel like, yes, could he impact this team in some capacity? Yes. But to me, of everything that happened in the preseason, that to me seems to be the biggest overreaction. It's just people are now like, how's he going to play on the other side of Montez Sweat? And it's like, hold up here. like pump the brakes a little bit. Like he might be the third or fourth guy still at best. So that to me is the other one, the non-Caleb Williams stuff that's hot in the streets right now, I would say.
Can I go to the biggest underreaction that I don't feel like is getting enough attention is the Jalen Johnson absence? Like,
yes,
that was supposed to be a non-football injury list, minor little thing, no big deal, not that concerned about it. And now, I mean, it feels like it's trending more and more like he's not going to be ready for week one. The way no one is committing to him being available for week one. The way they talk about, oh, Jordan Love's having the surgery, but he'll be good to go for week one. They're saying, well, when he's ready, he'll be out there. And that to me says we don't know if that's going to be week one. And like, yeah, when he's out there, it'll be fine. But that's a big deal when the best player on your defense is either not going to be out there or certainly not going to be 100% the moment he first steps back on the field. And it feels like everyone's just like, oh, well, Deshaun Wright and Tyreek Stevenson are battling out. And if they're both competing to be starting caliber players, then yes, I mean, you should be quote unquote fine, but you won't have Jalen Johnson potentially covering Justin Jefferson in week one. Like that seems like a lot bigger of a deal than we're making it out to be.
That's if Justin Jefferson plays in week one. The Vikings are getting hit as they just put another wide receiver on the injured reserve for the season. Randall Moore going to be out for the year, but like, I'm not gonna lie to you. I am on the underreaction side of this because the one thing that I do know, no matter what, is Jalen Johnson still a top 3 corner in football. And maybe, like him not being out there, I think if we start to get into 2, 3, 4 weeks into the season, then it's like, all right, somebody flip a table. Like, what's going on? You got to tell me something. But right now where we're at, I don't need Jalen Johnson in training camp. I don't need Jalen Johnson, out there on DJ Moore or on Roma Dunes. We know what Jalen Johnson is. I do need to know the answer on who the number 2 DB is. I do need to know the answer on who your third linebacker is going to be, how you're going to use Kyler Gordon, who's also now banged up with a hamstring injury, how you're going to use Jaquan, how you're going to use Byard. Like, I know, and I think the difference is too, is it's a defense that makes the most sense for Jalen. You're putting him on an island. So it's not like he needs to know all of this stuff. Go out there and be Jalen Johnson versus the best wide receivers in football. I know you can do that. May it take a couple weeks for him to get healthy. I would like to know at least what the injury is, so that we can kind of gauge, okay, like, is this going to be truly a week one thing? But I am on the underreaction side of Jalen Johnson.
I think for me, it's a little bit of PTSD, not even about Jalen Johnson, but just like so many examples of when the Bears kind of downplay the severity of an injury and then it lasts a lot longer than we think it will. I think about when Luther Burden has the soft tissue stuff at rookie minicamp, and then all of a sudden he's not ready till training camp. Or last year when they draft Karan Magaji, he'll be ready for training camp, and then he misses all of the preseason. We go back to Kevin White, like, no, we're not that concerned. It's not that big of a deal. Like, it's almost less about, well, Jalen himself and more about like, man, fool me once, shame on me. But every time it's like an injury turns out to be more severe than we thought it would be, it like starts to run a little rampant. We're like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm worried this is going to be way bigger than anybody actually knows because they're being pretty vague about exactly what it is and how long it's going to last.
Yeah, that I will agree with you on that. The vagueness is slightly concerning for me, but I also think, Ben Johnson has been so like, Ben Johnson walks in a room and almost punches you in the face with the honesty. It's like, I didn't need that today. You know what I mean? Like, he walks in, he's like, all right, I know you got 16 questions on this. Here's the problem. Okay. All right. I don't have questions anymore. Thanks. I can go write this article or go do this podcast. Like, I love the upfrontness of Ben Johnson and how in your face he is, how intense he is. And again, it's why I have less concerns, because I think if this was something where Jalen was going to miss the season or he was going to miss a month, they probably would let us know that.
Pat, before we wrap up here, I guess, since you came on as the guest today, we've discussed our expectations for the Bears this year. We kind of both are right around, like, could they, somewhere between 7 to 9, maybe 10 wins. What are your expectations for the Chicago Bears in 2025-26?
I've said, I'm living around that 9 and 8 range. I've maintained that I'm staying there because I think your schedule got a heck of a lot harder. And I thought you were a 7-win team last year. I think that you're playing defenses that are the top defenses in football. Now, you don't know what they'll be right when they get to you, but you start the first 4 weeks off with Javon Hargraves, Aiden Hutchinson, Micah Parsons, and Max Crosby with potentially what could be a rookie left tackle, or Braxton Jones, which may not be the better situation there. You've got a schedule that's going to be immensely difficult. And I think 9 wins, if you look at this schedule and you come away with 9 wins, you should feel good as a Bears fan that you're moving in the right direction, because this is a gauntlet schedule that tests how great a team will be, how great a team can be, and how, to me, I think it's one of those where if they find a way to sneak into the playoffs, I think everybody else comes back down to earth as well. Lions aren't going to win 14 games. Vikings aren't going to win 14 games. Packers aren't going to win 10. I think everybody kind of lives near each other. If you find a way into a playoff race here, this is a schedule that's going to test you to where the Bears may be a dangerous team in the playoffs if they can find their way in there.
All right, so besides Locked On Bulls, part of the Locked On Sports family, you can catch them 3 days a week right now. You're doing 3 or 5 days a week right now, Pat?
I think we still doing 5 days a week.
Still
We still
doing 5
doing
days a week
content
right now?
on morning. We talking Pat Will, baby. We talking Josh Giddey. We're talking, we talked shoes today at one point. There's not much.
Yeah, where in the world is Josh Giddey? But Pat, where else can people find you, your Bears content and everything else?
You can follow me on everything with the Chicago Bears podcast for ESPN 1000. I do that Monday through Friday. So tune in with us on that. I'm always up at camp. So if you see me up there, give a wave. You also follow us on the Windy City Breeze, where we've got Monday through Friday Bears content as well. And on Twitter at Pat the Designer, on every social media at Pat the Designer. Got a ton of content everywhere. And like you said, I try to get naps in where I can, because I'm always on the move.
Yeah, man, I understand that as well. Well, thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate it. Tell Brendan Riley I said what's up. He's a good friend of mine.
The guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll talk soon, man. You have a good one.
All right, man. Peace.
All right, when we get back here, let's figure out what else is going on with the Bears. We'll get into that next year on the Bears Squad Show on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel.
The Bears Squad Show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. On the 26th, for just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP or eyeing a long shot division winner like the Chicago Bears, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. You could even go for Ben Johnson's Coach of the Year odds, where he's been the betting favorite throughout the preseason, or you can parlay all of your division winner dark horses. However you do it, visit and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only on August 26th. So get started with FanDuel. Play your game.
All right, Lauren, we'll be just us the rest of the show. You guys are more than welcome to jump in on the comments, what we've been talking about so far, the Caleb Williams tier, of where he is in the tier 3, 23rd overall, according to Mike Sando of The Athletic. But now, Lauren, I want to get into maybe a little bit outside of Caleb Williams. Highest ceiling for an individual player on this team this year. My initial reaction is maybe because it goes so hand in hand with Caleb Williams. But I think about who is the biggest ceiling, who could be, on the NFL top 100 next year. My immediate thought is Rome Odunze, of just like who could be the guy, be the number 1 wide receiver by the end of the season. He's the one to me that I feel like outside of Caleb just has the biggest ceiling of anyone on this roster right now. Yeah,
definitely. If we're talking about just 2025, then that takes somebody like Colston Loveland off of the mix. So I think, overall could have the long-term biggest ceiling, and Luther Burden in there too. But for me, I think all of the well-deserved hype for Rome Odunze in year 2 and Loveland coming in and Burden coming in, I think it has helped us a little bit underrate DJ Moore again, which I think he kind of was coming out of Carolina, but then first year in Chicago had 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns, and now disappointing last season. Like I think, not that we're forgetting how good DJ Moore is, but I think we're underestimating a little bit how Ben Johnson will be able to use a player like this. And we get hints of it when we hear about DJ Moore lining up in the backfield and trying to work through that. But I just think if there's a player who's going to be as close to an Amon-Ra St. Brown type role in this Bears offense, especially because Luther Burden is so far down on the depth chart and a little bit behind, I think it's DJ Moore. Not that the role is going to be 1-to-1, but like Ben Johnson's offense is dating back even before he was offensive coordinator, but in other offenses he's been part of, like he always goes heavy to the slot receiver. And I think given Burden's slow upbringing, DJ Moore is going to end up doing a lot of that slot action. And I just think it's somehow going to fly under the radar a little bit that the Bears incumbent number one wide receiver, I think, is going to have another huge year and reassert himself as the number one in terms of like production. I think we talked about this a little bit on a previous stream where like Rome Odunze is going to be more of that true number one outside receiver like role. He's going to look more like a number one role in the offense, but I think the numbers will still be DJ Moore leading the team in targets, catches, yards, and maybe even receiving touchdowns because he'll be in the slot, he'll be in the backfield, he'll be in motion. He's more of the creative chess piece for Ben Johnson to work with, whereas Rome Odunze is more like all reliable on the outside.
It's a great point because, like, when I started this exercise, my immediately thought was where you started: Colson Loveland, Rome Odunze, the younger guys. But DJ Moore is someone that, he's also like even like the forgotten piece in the Panthers trade at this point. It feels like because everyone's so focused on getting Caleb. But I've always loved DJ Moore. When that trade happened, I was so excited for what it could be. And in moments, he's really lived up to the hype, and at moments he hasn't. But it doesn't really feel like it's his fault. So I think DJ Moore is a great option for Wells, for someone that could really elevate your ceiling. And I do think, too, across the league, he's really well respected, but the stats just aren't there. So we could see a big leap in terms of the category that he is put into at a pretty good time because he's got a contract here coming up in the near future as well.
Yeah, and was it him that I remember the stat? Maybe you mentioned it. That like this will be the first time in his career he's had the same quarterback in back-to-back seasons. Was that?
Oh yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
that's the DJ Moore stat. Like, I think we don't properly account for like it's sort of the Allen Robinson thing a little bit. I hate to even compare the two, but like DJ Moore hasn't had great quarterbacks, hasn't had great offensive coordinators. I mean, he had Joe Brady for a couple years early on in Carolina, and then it was Matt Rule and a rotating cast of characters, and then Luke Getsy and Shane Waldron. Like he's a player who feels like hasn't necessarily always been in a great offense, a great situation, or a great quarterback. And this feels like the best combination of the three that he will have had in his career. And that should prime him for a player who's been a consistently 1,000 or 1,100 yard receiver in lesser situations. In theory, should be back to 13 plus 100 yards this season. If Caleb's a 4,000 yard guy this year, DJ Moore should be the leading number on that distribution.
Yeah, on the other side of the ball, part of this is health. Is that if Jaquan Brisker can play in all these games this year, he's one of two guys that it jumped to me about who was the highest ceiling on the Bears defense this year. We saw how good it was last year and the impact he can make from a hard hitting perspective, from a turnover perspective. If he can just be out there, it already raises his ceiling to another level because he just has missed so much time. And so that's more of a fingers crossed, I would say, of hopefully not just for this season, but for his career, stay out of the concussion protocol this year. But Jaquan Brisker was one of the two defensive guys that jumped out to me about who could have the highest ceiling for the Bears this year.
Was the other one Kyler Gordon?
Yes.
Because that's where I was going to go next.
Yes.
Just the way that I think Dennis Allen is only scratching the surface when he talks about some of the different ways they're going to use Kyler Gordon. Like, I think he doesn't want to give too much away there publicly to not let opposing offenses be able to guess fully what that's going to look like. But Dennis Allen, if there's one thing about him, like he gets creative with his defensive backs. He's had guys like Tyrann Mathieu before. Not that Gordon is Tyrann Mathieu at all, but just that he's going to play a bunch of different positions and line up in a bunch of different spots and be that real like wild card jack of all trades that opposing quarterbacks are never going to quite know where he's going to line up, what he's going to be asked to do on a specific play. He could literally cut, and if you're dropping 7 guys back in zone coverage, he could literally end up in any one of those 7 zones. And he's the only player on the field that you can do that with. And so to me, I know he's dealing with a little injury right now too, but if he's healthy and good to go, that's someone who I think is going to maybe benefit the most of anybody in the scheme change. In addition, I mean, because I think, Stevenson and some of the other corners are going to benefit from the scheme change too, but like, they're starting from a little bit lower to benefit from. So talking about the ceiling, like I think Kyler Gordon can go from kind of a mini breakout season last year. I mean, he got the big contract. It was a breakout season, but not like a nationally recognized breakout season. But like this could be the kind of year where not that he's in like defensive player of the year conversation, but like Pro Bowl recognition, like where people are like, oh, he deserves to be there because we're seeing him get these interceptions, these sacks, these run stops. Like he's just all over the field and get some of that national hype.
Yeah, so the other one that I'll also throw on this list now, this is where I'm going to agree with Pat, who was just on with us, about Jalen Johnson being a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. but we're working our way through the NFL top 100 right now. And these players, again, I guess it's not over yet. So maybe Jalen Johnson goes from off the list to like in the top 35. Haven't seen him yet on this list yet, I don't believe. And you got like Cooper DeJean out there, like on this list already. It's crazy. So the level of respect in the ceiling for Jalen Johnson, there's a lot of room to grow because he might be the most disrespected player in the NFL right now. Maybe that's Bears fan bias, but it's crazy to me that he's on, 10th or 11th in Madden ratings, or like he's always on just on the outside of that list. And then feels like he just does not get the love that he deserves nationally in any capacity.
And I worry, we talked about the injury thing earlier, and I certainly worry about it a little more than Pat does here. I don't worry that he's going to come back and not be great, but I worry that maybe he's at 80%, and then it's a little bit harder for him to get that recognition, that he's still the best player in the Bears defense, but maybe he's not. If he's not 100%, then maybe he's not a top 3 corner, but he's a top 10 corner, and that doesn't, I worry that hurts his cause for being the great guy, but maybe he'll be back 2 weeks from now, gets back at camp, back at practice. He's good to go and revved up 100% by week 1, and it's nothing to worry about, but I do worry about that a little bit. What about Montez Sweat for you? Do you feel like because whenever there's a player who like disappointed uncharacteristically under the previous coaching staff, it feels like primed to be a player that should be able to bounce back a bit more, especially if Dennis Allen gets a little bit more creative with the pass rush and the fronts instead of just Eberflus would kind of just rush 4 and occasionally stunt and twist them a little bit, maybe a slot blitz every once in a while. But for the most part, they were kind of just counting on guys to win up front. And now schematically, they should be able to give him some more help. So in theory, you could get back to double-digit sack Montez Sweat, ?
Yeah, I know. I think that's a great point because it's, while it's been a little disappointing since he became a Bear, I think throughout this whole process, like I think we all have higher expectations for when they made that kind of splash move a year and a half ago, basically at this point, because it was middle of the season. And I think he deserves to be on this list. It's just, I'm so much more confident in Kyler, Brisker, in the context of what we're talking about, Jalen Johnson. Montez Sweat, though, if you talk about, going above the 9-8 expectations this year that us and pretty much every guest we've had on has kind of put on the Bears, like, how do you cross that threshold to a 10 team, an 11-win team? How do you push for a playoff spot with ease instead of in the hunt on the graphic for 18 weeks? I think it starts with Montez Sweat. He's a huge part of that. Like, if you need someone to reach their ceiling, he needs to go there. Like, you need someone to get after the quarterback. So I hope that he does find a ceiling that I'm just not sure he has at this point.
Yeah, you got to hope that the upgrade of the rest of the defensive line around him can take more of those double teams away from him and give him more one-on-ones and less of that offensive line pressure to just kind of say, hey, you can do your thing. Because, like you look back at Montez Sweat's last couple of seasons since he came to the Bears, his pass rush win rate from PFF has been about the same as first year in Chicago and his second year in Chicago. The sacks were way down, but he just had more pressures and hits and not as many like actually finishing at the quarterback. And so you wonder if they're playing more man-to-man on the backside, so maybe the quarterback doesn't have quicker windows to get rid of it, underneath his zones. And maybe if, Grady Jarrett or, Javon Dexter taking another step this year, or if Dio Dengbo can be an ascending player, like if that can all just make Montez Sweat's job a little bit easier so that that pressure or that hit converts to a sack, and then you feel a little bit more like, all right, there's more of the playmaking that maybe in the last couple seasons was a little bit more just like a half second too late to actually finish.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis Allen is, when we were talking earlier about, underrated and overrated storylines and things like that, I think he's got lost so far in what's happened in this offseason as well, because so much of the focus has been on Ben Johnson. But, that practice that Pat was talking about where he was there, and it's the most physical practice people have seen since Lovie Smith was the coach, what the reports were coming out of the Dolphins inter-squad game, what we saw in the first preseason game. Like, you're seeing the impact of Dennis Allen. And I mean, in theory, like this defense that started the year off really strong last year for the Bears, it does feel like as a whole, the ceiling is higher. So I'll ask this question then. Who is the higher ceiling, the offense or the defense?
I think the defense has the higher floor for sure, but ceiling is tricky because, I mean, so here's the thing. It's like, I think big picture, the offense has more overall talent in terms of like player. So like if everything goes the way it's supposed to, I think the offense has the higher ceiling, but I have less faith in the offense actually reaching that ceiling than the defense reaching its ceiling, even if the defense's ceiling is lower than the offense's. So like if you could like numerically value, like I think the defense is going to be maybe better than the offense just because of the probabilities of getting there, but the offense could go higher than the defense, but I think it's more likely to not. I think the defense is
for sure
getting where it needs to go a little bit with a higher probability than the offense, just because, first year with the quarterback, like it's easier to install defense more quickly than an offense, plus the injury question marks and histories of a couple of the offensive linemen and the rest of that group up front.
Yeah, I mean, what you've invested in the offense between, Bird and Adunze and Caleb and all the offensive linemen and Loveland and all this stuff, that feels like a ceiling. If you did like a grading scale, could be like an A+ if everything clicked perfectly. For the defense, while it feels like it can be, a very good defense, maybe it's like I think it's like an A-. It might be their ceiling because of what you said. The Bears have not invested in much through draft capital, through free agency with Ryan Poles. So it just feels like it's just a little bit lower. So we've kind of been talking about, where Caleb Williams ranks on the Mike Sando list earlier in the show with Pat the Designer. We've talked about ceilings and floors. And this next segment here, I want to talk about who is under the most pressure just overall in the North, not just the Bears. So I've got a list of 3 guys. Didn't cover all the teams. Went 3 deep on this one. Lauren, you can give you some time to think of it as well. Who is under the most pressure in the NFC North, and where Caleb Williams for me fits into that? We'll get to that next year on the Bear Squad show on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. All right, so I got 3 players, Lauren, for you that I think are under the most pressure in the NFC North this year. It's not all quarterbacks. That was the hardest part about this. Is I tried to find at least one that wasn't a quarterback. So number 3 on this list, I have Caleb Williams. He's not under the most pressure, but I think that there is obviously a very high expectation for him this year. Now, I have JJ McCarthy coming in at number 2. The reason why I have McCarthy at 2 is just because the team that they built last year looks so ready to not just win, but to win meaningful football games, into January and try to push for February. Sam Darnold was excellent for them. They moved on. They didn't even question it. And they're just giving the keys to JJ McCarthy. And yes, he's basically a rookie this year, but I watched his preseason game. He played 1 possession. It was overall positive, I would say, for him. He looked very comfortable out there in his first, NFL action. So I have JJ McCarthy at number 2 on this list. And then, well, I lied. I couldn't do it. Jordan Love's number 1 on my list. I think he's got a lot of pressure this year because I even think it's more internal in terms of like the Green Bay Packers fan base that like you've paid this guy and they don't seem to be bought in. I might have a different perspective than I do because of where you currently live, but like I work with a Packers fan every day and maybe I'm biased because of him, but I've never met a fan dislike their own quarterback who's pretty solid as much as he does. So I think Love is pretty high up there because I also like McCarthy. I think the Packers expect themselves to go very far this year in the playoffs. And if they don't, I think Jordan Love might be at the center of a lot of that.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think what I hear from Packers fans, I think there's a cautious optimism with Jordan Love. Like, I don't think they're like fully sold, oh, this is the greatest quarterback ever kind of thing. But like a lot of what I get for Jordan Love is like, well, the receivers dropped a lot of passes last season. It's a really young group around him. And so they needed to revamp the offensive line a little bit. They went out and got Matthew Golden and added at receiver some weapons that can do some stuff there. And then, hopefully the defense can kind of keep ascending as a younger group there. And there's a feeling like, I don't know. I feel some amount of patience with Jordan Love, more so not about him as a quarterback, but just patience of like everything around him is still developing. And so he doesn't need to be Superman right away, even though he is getting the massive contract. Like there's definitely pressure there, but that I end up feeling more pressure on Caleb Williams just because I think there's not going to be as much patience for him. I think with Love, it's like, well, the receivers are still young and the offensive line is still new and they just got rid of Jair Alexander. So the defense is still kind of transitioning and they need younger guys to step up there. But it's a lot easier to say, well, it's not Jordan Love's fault if things don't go great in Green Bay. Whereas like in Chicago, it feels like Caleb Williams is almost completely out of excuses, right? Like if things don't go right this year in Chicago, you're going to be hard pressed to find reasons not about Caleb Williams. I mean, of course, we can start with the pass rush might not be where it needs to be or whatever, and offensive line injuries and stuff could change some of that. But for the most part, it's like you really got to start seeing it now from Caleb, because if you don't see it this year, the pitchforks and torches are going to be on people. There's going to be, I mean, it's going to be a firestorm around what he does. Whereas, like, if the Packers go win 10 games and, miss the playoffs or win one playoff game, like, I don't know that Jordan Love's seat is instantly hot the same way that Williams is. And same with JJ McCarthy, right? Well, he's a rookie quarterback, so we'll be patient with him and give him another year, even though it felt like, yes, they're looking for the quarterback upgrade. Like, rookie quarterbacks always get a little bit more of a leash, whereas, like, man, Caleb is like, it's all about him and on his shoulders, and everything was built around, all right, you got to go and take it from here, buddy. And I don't know that Jordan Love is quite there yet. And I don't know that as a rookie, JJ McCarthy's not quite there yet either, because they're going to try and kind of hide him and make things a little bit more simple. But Caleb is like right out in the open, like, this is your offense, go take it and run with it.
Which is, it's crazy. I mean, like, to go through what the Bears went through last year and everything with Caleb and 2 head coaches and 2 offensive coordinators, really, I guess 3 offensive coordinators, and Thomas Brown, being in the booth and being on the sidelines and everything that went on with the Bears last year. And it is interesting that people have been like, the expectation for him in year 2, it just feels different. Like it's, I know Trevor Lawrence had some success as a rookie, but like, it wasn't great. And I feel like people are still trying to give Trevor Lawrence a pass because of he was labeled as generational. And even it hasn't looked good, like they're still not sure with him yet. And they don't want to close the door. Bryce Young had some positive moments last year. They're leaving it open. But it does feel like the national perspective is just, if Caleb's not good this year, the door is shut, which I think is crazy to be thinking that way.
Well, and I think Jared Goff's going to be under some of that kind of pressure too, where it's like, you got to show us that you can do it without Ben Johnson. And if Jared Goff has a bad year this year, is everyone just going to jump back to, well, we're back to Rams Jared Goff. He wasn't actually that good. Ben Johnson was the whole reason he's good. Like, even after 1 year of like one step back year, it feels like all of a sudden the perception of him as a quarterback might change. Like, in reality, all 4 of these quarterbacks deserve more patience and more time, and we shouldn't rush to any kind of judgment on like, oh, well, based on what we saw this one season, then therefore this means the definitive answer of them for the rest of their career. But the only excuse Caleb's got is like, well, it's year 1 with Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson's supposed to be the guy that can do it right away, even in year 1. So it's so pressure packed on him in a way that I think helps explain some of the polarization we talked about earlier with Pat.
Yeah, it's going to be this season's going to be fascinating. I think these 4 teams, it really feels like they could all head in a serious direction or another. I mean, I was even thinking about, like, would anyone be on the hot seat in this division? And the only one I think you could argue would be, if things were to go terribly this year, could you blame LaFleur for the way things are going in Green Bay? But like, that seems illogical at the same time. Like, there's no way Dan Campbell's in under any pressure this year, or Kevin O'Connell, or Ben Johnson. Like, the only one there's even an argument for is LaFleur. But at the same time, there's a real argument for all of them to make the playoffs, and a real argument for all of them to miss the playoffs in some capacity at this point in the season.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to be most fun about the division. Real quick, if we want to jump in on like non-quarterbacks with a lot of pressure, I feel like Aiden Hutchinson for me is really high on that list, coming off the injury and now like talking about a big contract extension. Like, you got to, I mean, he's looked great. Like, it's not like he has to sort of prove whether he's any good or not, but at the same time, you got to be that truly special, transcendent player for that Lions defense, especially with Aaron Glenn gone. Like, they are counting on him to not just be great, but to be like special, to be elite, to be Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons level. Like, you take over games, and we've seen him do that in what's now kind of a smaller sample size, and now post injury, he's got to do it again. So he can, not only can he get paid, but also because the defense is drastically going to be counting on that, because they don't have a lot of other like big time household name playmakers. I mean, the safeties were really good last year, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, but like, that only happens if they can continue to be that strong up front, and the rest of their pass rush is not anything to write home about either.
Yeah, I would include, I guess, too, just because honestly, I think the Packers told you how they feel about their wide receiver room. I'll just kind of put them in collectively. They've spent a ton of draft capital over the last 3 seasons on guys, not all of them first rounders, but they've had a bunch of bodies, a bunch of young guys in that room. And it's like, it just feels like, Golden being drafted there, it amps the pressure up on all of those guys who had been there already. And so I put them on there. The Vikings is interesting in terms of who has the most pressure on maybe on that team outside of JJ McCarthy. Honestly, in a way, I kind of want to go like Jordan Addison, because once you become a headache, you got to perform. Like, you're suspended for 3 games. You got to be good when you come back, or potentially the headache's not worth it at some point, especially when he's going to be needing the contract too at some point. So I think Addison might be my number 1 for the Vikings, honestly, overall, now that I think about it.
I was wondering about like either of the new pass rushers they added, Jonathan Allen or Javon Hargrave. Like, it's tricky for me because, well, it's Brian Flores' defense, so they're just going to blitz a lot, so it makes any individual player, not that big of a deal, not as much pressure. But when you're given Hargrave $30 million over 2 years and Jonathan Allen got $50 million over 3 years, like, those are highly paid pass rushers, and I think part of their job is going to be, hey, make it so we don't have to blitz 6 or 7. We don't have to send the house. Maybe we can just rush 5 because you are going to be the upgrade over the defensive lineman that we've been working with in the past. That it doesn't have to be Chicago Bears legend Jonathan Bullard being one of the Vikings' top defensive linemen, right? It can be maybe a guy who's been to some Pro Bowls before and some veterans that were really expensive. And honestly, can we throw Grady Jarrett in that conversation too, of like, hey, spend money on an old guy on the defensive line. You got to be great again right away for this team.
I was actually thinking Grady Jarrett and Sweat, who we were talking about earlier. I mean, the Bears haven't really invested in the defensive line outside of those 2 guys without some moves that look pretty good in the margins or, middle round draft picks. So like Grady Jarrett and Montez, based on contracts, draft capital given up for them, all of that, like, they're probably the 2 guys that have the most scrutiny in terms of the defense this year, specifically in relation to Ryan Poles and the moves that he's made or hasn't made on defense.
And I'll throw Jonah Jackson in there on offense just because you give up
a
draft pick for him, but you give up a pick for him and give him a huge contract, and you haven't been good in 2 or 3 seasons, haven't been healthy in 2 or 3 seasons. Like,
it's a big risk.
It's a huge, huge risk for the offensive line and also like a critical factor to the team's success. If you're starting Ryan Bates for 8 games this season, that's going to be a lot different than Pro Bowl 2022 Jonah Jackson.
Yeah, and then I guess too, left tackle, which is the biggest question mark of them all right now. I mean, it doesn't feel like we're any closer. I don't know if we're going to know week 1, Lauren. Like, I don't know if when we're getting ready, we're doing that Tuesday show and maybe a Friday show that week too. It just feels like we're not going to have any idea who the starting left tackle is until the first possession.
Offensive coordinator Declan Doyle said they're starting to see some separation between the 2, even though he didn't say who was separating between the 2. But I suspect we are trending towards a Braxton Jones starting left tackle announcement. I mean, not that it's going to be like a formal announcement this week, but that at some point they're just going to say, hey, we're sticking with the veteran right now, and we're going to let the rookie kind of keep working on the bench. But I also think Ozzie Trapillo will start at least 1 game at left tackle this season, even if it's not beginning in week 1.
He is Lauren Cox. You can catch him here every day on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, Monday through Friday, talking all things Bears football. We'll be back with you again every Tuesday at 4:00 throughout the entire season, and for an hour after every single Bears game. We'll be live here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. So as soon as they are wrapped up, late one this weekend, 7:00 kick versus the Bills, Sunday Night Football in the preseason. Can't wait. We'll be right here with you guys on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. So we'll talk to you guys on Sunday. Thanks for watching. Peace.